My name is Mike Latta, and I'm from the Seattle area. If I told you Enumclaw, Washington, nobody'd ever heard of that, but it's about 45 minutes southeast of Seattle. I bought the airplane from my neighbor, and I'd spied the carcass laying in his rafters for the last 20 years. I've been after him to buy it. Finally, one day he says, "Okay, it's for sale." And he quoted me a price, and I had to fess up because I've been bugging him so much. So I bought it, took it home, and it was just a basket of tubes, just held together entirely by rust and corrosion. Had a 90 Franklin on it, and I got to looking at the paperwork, hadn't flown since 1965. So I figured it was pretty well toast, and everybody I talked to about restoring it or rebuilding it just laughed. So I knew I had to find another engine for it, which I promptly found an 0200 Continental. I was told you couldn't get any field approvals for it out of the Seattle FSDO, and they turned out, through the help of Steve Knopp of P-Ponk Aviation, to be a very helpful. And Tim Talon, bless his heart, the interstate guru, helped me. I was on the phone to him sometimes every day, and I was very intimidated because I'd never covered an airplane before. I didn't know where to start, and I had a very understanding IA who said, "This is the horizontal stabilizer. This is what you're going to start covering, and this is what you need." So I went and bought all the materials, and he showed me how to cover the horizontal stabilizer, and then I started. By the time I got through with the tail feathers, away I went. However, I got into one wing, had it covered through silver, and found out the clips weren't right. Had to strip all the fabric off the wing and start all over again. So it was definitely a labor of love and frustration. But I had lots of help, and had to do some welding. I learned a little bit about welding on it, and replaced the lower longerons. Of course, it came with a windshield, and I spent a day polishing out the windshield before I found out that it wasn't the windshield for the airplane. So I got to junk that day and had to make all the glass for it, and got it all put together. It took me 2 years, 11 months, and 2 weeks, and that first flew on the 15th of last November. So anyway, that's the story. I flew it out to Oshkosh the first of the month, and took it to the Oshkosh show, and flew with my friend Matt Northway and his Tim Talon restored Interstate, and then I put it in a hangar outside of one of my colleagues I worked with, American. Found me a hangar outside of Chicago and stuck it in there, and tried to get back I went back home on an airline, tried to get back out here on an airline, and couldn't get a seat anywhere, so we drove. My wife, bless her heart, and I have to give her, man, she sewed her heart out making
God love her. Oh, good for
fabric
you. Right on.
And she drove out here with me. She's in there right now, knitting or doing something, but she's been a real trooper on this thing.
Good deal. Right on.
The only thing she said is that you're getting too fat and old to prop an airplane. She said, "I don't want you to prop. I won't gripe a word as long as you put a starter on it." So I went the whole electrical system on it, which made it heavier than I wish it was. But anyway, it doesn't know it. It flies just fine. It cruises about 105 miles an hour and gets right across the countryside.
How long did it take you to get here?
I left Seattle on a Friday morning, and we got into Oshkosh on Sunday morning. We didn't run into a cloud in the sky all the way from Seattle to Oshkosh.
I'd have been here in 3 days too, but weather, forget it.
Yeah.
Stuck valve in the weather, but I had the stuck valve when I had the weather, so it was a perfect combo.
Yeah. So anyway, I got it here, just changed the oil, getting it ready for the trip home. And hopefully it'll be as effortless and flawless going home as it was coming out. Never had a minute's trouble with it. Didn't burn a drop of oil. Of course, it's got a brand new engine on it. It shouldn't have burned any. I put the Taylorcraft wing tanks in it, and put Cleveland wheels and brakes on it, and the 0200. And Seattle FSDO, a fellow by the name of Bill Reichert, very thorough, I'll say, very thorough, but told us how to do it and what to do, and we did it. What interstate serial number do you have?
250.
Oh, this is 274.
And mine was my first airplane ride. This weekend will be 61 years ago
Oh,
in that airplane.
Is that a
Yeah.
fact? Now, where are you out of?
Arkansas.
And your name is?
Mervyn Bradford.
Mervyn Mike Latta. Nice
Mike.
to meet you, sir. My pleasure.
Got to have the wings rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
Got to have the brake changeover finished. Got to have a lower cowling.
Yeah, I'm gonna, when I get home, I cowled this just a little tight. It doesn't overheat, but you can see where I had to flare it out to make it not crack this. So I'll replace that when I get home. All of that was pretty interesting because I'd never done any of that kind of stuff before. And then I went to the elevator, and I ended up covering this elevator 3 times because I could not get it to stick for where the trim tab connects, and it kept popping loose. And so once again, I'm on the phone to Tim Talon, the guru, who also clued me in on how to deal with the trim tab mechanism in there. Keep in mind, I didn't take the airplane apart, so it was had no drawings or anything to go by, and so I was on the phone a lot with Tim, bless his heart. He was very helpful. These are original flying wires. I had them recovered, cad plated. And I also recovered all the tail surfaces before I went any further. And I took time that maybe a commercial operator wouldn't. I bought a little meat cutter type iron, and I pulled all the tapes around the curves to where I didn't have to make any cuts or anything in it, or use any of the stretch tapes on it. And that took a lot of time. That's the part that really surprised me, was how much time everything takes on covering an airplane. It's just time, lots of time. The next thing we covered was the fuselage, and the fuselage we had to do some sewing because the process requires an inch grip, and so that was a little bit of a test, but we worked it around, and just take your time. I had some help on that from someone that knew, around this area here. It's very difficult to get it smooth, and it worked out okay. If I ever rebuild another interstate, I can do it in half the time and twice the job. So I called the IA over, and he says, "What the heck happened to you here? This isn't going to cut it." Basically, I had to pull the fabric off the wing and start over again. We found the problem. That was back in 1965. But by the way, this airplane only has 1,350 hours on it total time. Well, now it's got 1,400 hours on it. But when they took the fabric off, they made a cut here and a cut along the trailing edge of the aileron well, and just grabbed the fabric and just started ripping it loose on both sides. Well, when they did that, they pulled out the staples on some of the ribs and left them in others. And the staples they pulled out elongated the holes, and the staples wouldn't stay in the next application. Because the holes, once they're big, they're too big. So I ended up moving them a half an inch forward and had to re-drill the whole wing, both wings. And I live on an air park, and I have all kinds of talent there available to me. That was very helpful. Welders showed me how to weld. One of my neighbors, Jim Flynn, made this special little tool that I could put new holes in it for the staples. And then I restapled it, recovered the wing, and it came out much better. And had to, of course, build all the cowlings. And that was a little, the doors and the cowlings, all of that stuff was there, but it was in such sad shape, and like you said, it was patches on patches and beat up and dented up and everything, so I just bunched it all, used it as pattern, and I didn't know how to do that, so I went to a body shop and asked a fellow to show me how to hand bend this aluminum and stuff. He said, "Well, get yourself a couple pipes and I'll show you." So I got a couple 1.5-inch pipe and a 2-inch pipe, and that's how I made the cowlings. And the landing gear was complete except the brakes were shot. Couldn't get any parts, so that's when I got another field approval for the treatment of wheels and brakes, which worked really well. The original Carwell compass is in there, and the oil pressure, oil temperature, and amp meter gauge. By the way, this did come to factory with a 90 Franklin with an electrical system in it. By golly, took off, and it flew. It was off the ground in no time. It just wants to fly. And so I was pretty excited about it.